I am not an overreactor to my team. Like, I'm really not. Sometimes I might overreact to
everybody else's team. Welcome in. Week 4 is just about in the books, and we are sitting here with our heads down a little bit, both for different reasons. But, man, it's a crazy week 4, and I can honestly admit that it did not go the way I wanted it to.
Every week, man. Every week, the NFL, there is only one certainty in the NFL, and that is uncertainty. You have no idea how these games are going to play out. You have no idea what's going to happen. You have no idea who's going to get hurt. I mean, for all you know, a quarterback could try to recover a fumble and then take out his best wide receiver's ACL. Anything can happen in this league, Ryan.
I feel like I've heard that story before.
I don't know. I mean, it seems almost too crazy to believe.
Yeah, it's something like a trick or something, or a trick play, some may say. But anyway, let's move on through the week, and let's talk about some of these games that happened. By the way, did you happen to catch what Joe Flacco said about Anthony Richardson?
About him being older than his mom?
Is that not hilarious?
First off,
gosh,
impossible not to like Joe Flacco.
We'll talk about him later too, but I love that comment. He said, I'm 8 minutes older than his mom. Or 8 days, one of the two. I can't remember what he said.
8 minutes would be oddly specific. If he knows that, I'd be like, dude, how are you talking to my mom?
That's his daddy. He's 8 days older than his mom. There's no chance that he thinks I'm cool. Talking about Anthony Richardson thinking Joe Flacco is cool. I just thought that was hilarious.
Yeah, I love Joe Flacco.
One of the funny post-game interviews that happened today that I managed to catch. But let's move on and talk about another football team with another quarterback that I think we'll all want to hear about. Tristan, the Washington Commanders took on Arizona today. One of the top-ranked offenses in the league, held them to 14 points and scored 42. Jayden Daniels is a masterpiece on the field. He is a generational superstar. You couldn't tell me any different, but I want to hear it from you because I asked you this last week, and you put the Eagles atop the NFC East, and I'd like to know now, is it time for us to take Washington with this win seriously as a contender for the NFC East instead of Dallas or Philadelphia?
So it's time to take them as a contender, sure, but I think you're kind of playing the game a little bit because when we talked about it before the show, I think you were kind of more insinuating like, we should just hand the NFC East to the Commanders, say it's theirs.
I would at this point.
Okay, I think that's too far. I do think they're for sure a contender. You might even say they're the favorites at this point because of Jayden Daniels. It's that simple. You're right. He looks incredible. I go ahead and just be honest. I didn't think he was going to be good in the NFL. I was concerned about his stature because he looked small. And I was worried about his intermediate passing game because you didn't see the ton at LSU. Well, it's just because you didn't have to, because he was just throwing dimes to Malik Neighbors all the time. I love watching him play football. It's incredible. I'm sure people have seen the stat already. He's got the best completion percentage through 4 games of any quarterback ever. That's unbelievable. They ran through Arizona, and their defense stepped up. So really impressive. The scouts were right. We did have a generational quarterback in this draft. They just thought it was the wrong quarterback. Turns out it was Jayden Daniels. Here's the reason I'm not ready to just hand the NFC East over to the Commanders yet.
Okay.
It's the schedule and it's the defense. The defense has been bad for most of the season. Obviously, their performance today against Arizona was really good. They held Arizona to 14. But if you look, Tampa, week 1, they lost. They let Tampa hang 37 on them. They let New York hang 18 on them. They let the Bengals hang 33 on them. Now they stopped Arizona. Their next 2 games, Cleveland and Baltimore. 2 really, really stout defenses. I don't think they have to be too worried about Deshaun Watson or the Browns scoring any points. But I want to see what happens when they run up against tougher defensive competition, because as much as I like the Commanders and as much as I agree they're an NFC East contender, just looking at the schedule, Tampa, Giants, Bengals, Cardinals, and they lost to Tampa, it's not like they've beaten any real powerhouses.
Yeah, I would disagree a little bit. And the reason I say that is because their defense took on one of the highest powered offenses. So are you concerned about the defense, even though what they did today was kind of, I'm not going to say the impossible, but it was very unlikely that they were going to, hold Kyler Murray and Marvin Harrison Jr. to just 14 points. I find it hard to believe that this Commanders defense isn't improving every single week. And look, we look at teams and we say that they're bad, defensively, and they come out the very next week and they put on a showstopper, aka the Ravens. When you look at how many yards the Washington Commanders put up today, 449 offensive yards. I don't care if your defense is subpar, middle of the pack. You win football games when you put up almost 500 yards.
No, I agree with that. And I think, obviously that's how they were able to beat the Bengals. If they're able to keep doing that, yeah, of course. But you have to just wonder if the rubber meets the road when they go up against, when Jayden Daniels and company go up against a more stout defense like Cleveland, like Baltimore. If they had to play Kansas City, how would they look against them? Obviously, that's not a concern. Their concern is more NFC teams. Now, in the NFC, I think they're going to be okay because there's not really any just killer defenses in the NFC right now, other than maybe Minnesota, that you just know is going to take you away every single game. So we'll see. But you're right. The way they played Arizona and the way they held them to 14 points is impressive. I will say they still gave up yards, though. Arizona had 181 rushing yards, so they were able to move the ball. The big thing is they stopped Arizona's pass game. Arizona only 115 yards through the air. That's impressive because the Commanders were letting Joe Burrow and the Bengals throw all over them.
Yeah.
It goes back to kind of the theme of this season. A team will look one way one week and then look completely different the next week. There's not a ton of consistency in this league other than maybe the Vikings right now. So I'm just a little hesitant to go ahead and hand them the NFC East. But with the way the Eagles are playing, not good. And the way the Cowboys are playing, not great. Yeah, it's theirs for the taking. Like they are in the lead. They're 3-1. They lead the division. All they have to do is keep playing like this, and they will win the division. We'll see. I know there's going to be some bumps along the way, though.
Hedging your bets right now. The season ends at week 6. Everything is like it is right now. Who wins the NFC East?
Week 6, I'd probably lean Commanders.
I think we're really going to see them put to the test when they go to Baltimore and play the Ravens. That's going to be the biggest game because if they can take away the passing game, the Ravens also have somebody named Derrick Henry who can run the ball a lot better, in my opinion, than James Conner. So they're going to be put to the test for sure. And at that point, it may just be a shootout. The Commanders may find themselves in several shootouts if this defense can't continue to improve. I do think they're on the right trajectory. I think they are getting better week by week. Hopefully, they need to. Every team needs to get better week by week. But I do think that the Commanders have what it takes offensively. I'm a big Jayden Daniels fan now, and I think that we made the joke before the season started. How can you strike gold twice? Talking about C.J. Stroud, right? Like, that's a generational rookie. Like, that almost never happens. Jayden Daniels has the chance to do what C.J. Stroud did, and maybe even better. Tristan, let's talk about your Kansas City Chiefs. They survived the Chargers, but they also lose their biggest weapon. Well, now in the wide receiver realm, they lost their biggest weapon last week with 2 weeks ago with Pacheco, right. And now they're losing Rashee Rice. Can this defense carry this team to a title, even though they lost Rice today and they lost Pacheco a couple weeks ago?
I'm a Kansas City optimist, otherwise known as a Kansas City realist. I'm just going to be straight up. I'm not trying, and you can speak if anyone's watching this show for the first time. First off, thank you. Make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel. We appreciate having you. Secondly, I am not an overreactor to my team. Like, I'm really not. Sometimes I might overreact to
everybody
something else.
Else's team.
Yeah, of course. And play it up and we'll have some fun. And that's kind of the game. It's a, multi-week soap opera as the NFL. I really typically don't overreact to the Chiefs. So I don't think this is an overreaction. It might prove to be. I don't think we have a shot. But I don't think they have a shot to win the title with Rice gone. You lose. It's not just Rice, though. It's Hollywood Brown, who you lost before the season, Rashee Rice, and Isaiah Pacheco. Now you're in a position where you have last year's offense, but a little worse, really. It's going to be worse than last year's offense because at least last year you didn't have any receivers, but you had Pacheco. I am not trying to be dramatic when I say I don't know how the Chiefs survive this. They will manage because of Mahomes and because, as you mentioned in the question, they have an excellent defense. The defense is suffocating, particularly in the second half. I mean, they're one of the best defenses in the league. So I do believe the defense and Mahomes playing smart and Andy Reid, and by the way, Kareem Hunt, who looked fantastic today, looked like the old Kareem Hunt. Carson Steele fumbled for the second time already this season, and Andy Reid said, that's enough of that. We're going to Kareem Hunt. He looked explosive again. We'll see if he can keep that up. I don't know, man. I'm really actually interested to hear your take as an outsider, as a non-Chiefs fan. I'm sure Chiefs are still going to make the playoffs. I don't think they can win the Super Bowl with no receivers.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you, but I also have been bit by the Patrick Mahomes bug before, and I don't trust my intuition about the Chiefs. This is the only team where I think one thing, and it always happens the opposite way. So I'm just going to give you this. That's just all I'm going to give you. Because today, now I will say, the biggest opportunity on the table here is going to be for Xavier Worthy. This is his time to shine. This is his time to step up. We saw that today with a gigantic pass downfield for a touchdown. That was a masterpiece. Now, after that, they pretty much shut Worthy down for the most part. But you did see Travis Kelce step up. He was targeted 9 times, caught 7 of them. So it was nice to see that he was still playing and not just out there with Taylor Swift most of the time.
Well, this was proof that it really wasn't Kelce as much as it was they haven't needed Kelce. Obviously everyone had been focusing on Kelce, and so Mahomes has been going to Rice. But when he had no choice, he went to Kelce. Kelce got 89 yards.
Yep, and we've always said this, that Patrick Mahomes makes everybody around him better and makes them step up. Noah Gray today had a couple of good, important catches.
I actually really like Noah Gray.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a better than you may be anticipating, but I do think that the Chiefs need to go out and try to find somebody to replace Rice, because I don't think, I'm right there with you, because I don't think that Rice and Pacheco going down, you can win a Super Bowl title.
And Hollywood Brown. I know we forget about it because it happened in the preseason, but remember, that was supposed to be the offense. It was supposed to be Hollywood, Xavier Worthy, and Rashee Rice. And when you look at the Chiefs surviving without them, imagine what the offense would be with all 3 of those guys.
Wouldn't that be crazy?
You can't knock Brett Veach. He put the pieces there. You know what I mean? Injuries happen. The offensive line, the 2 tackles, shaky. We knew that was going to be an issue. But overall, they're able to survive the tackle situation because of how good the interior is. But as you just said, when you lose Pacheco on top of the 2 receivers, it's a hit, man. It's a huge hit. And even though Xavier Worthy is popping for a couple of those explosive plays, for the Chiefs to have a real shot, he's going to have to be more consistent. He can't just be the guy that can get you over the top maybe once a game, even though, obviously, he scored a touchdown. He's going to have to take on more of that Rashee Rice role. And also, hopefully they can go maybe near the trade deadline and grab a solid number 2 guy to put into the offense.
You forget one of the free agents out right now is Michael Thomas.
Yeah,
I know that he's older and he has injury history, but I'm just saying that may buy you enough to say, okay, Worthy can now, because if you look at how Tyreek Hill plays, right? He can hit those long shots, but he's also great at a route running standpoint, slants. He can do it all. Worthy, he can beat somebody deep right now, but he's got to work on that, the finesse of route running, being able to, rack up yards after the catch.
And intermediate,
like that. And so you got Noah Gray. If you brought in a threat like Michael Thomas, and a threat maybe 2 years removed from a big threat, but he's still a threat nonetheless. If you brought in somebody like him, I think with Gray, Thomas, Worthy, you got a good shot at having a pretty good receiving core, especially if you can get up early and then forced to run the ball with Kareem Hunt. You got a decent looking offense that could probably win you a few games.
See, I would just assume rather roll with Juju than I would bring in Michael Thomas, because even if Michael Thomas has one good game, he's going to get hurt immediately, and then we're just going to relive the scenario. You know this. You told me this 3 years ago when we started the podcast. You're like, Michael Thomas is done, Tristan. You said he just gets hurt every season.
I'm looking at free agents, right? Instead of looking at trying to hit a trade or something like that. Because you did make a good point before the show, who's going to be willing to trade the Chiefs? They win all the time.
Right.
Who wants to make their season better? So I get that, but looking in the free agent market, you got that. You got Hunter Renfrow. You got Julio Jones. That's kind of your free agents that you're looking at right now. The best out of those, I would say right now, is probably Michael Thomas.
Yeah, it's not great. So I think you just kind of have to survive and hope Kareem Hunt continues to look like that. Hope Kelsey can continue to play that role while Xavier Worthy continues to develop and hopefully gets better as the season goes along. We saw that with Rice last year. As the season progressed, he got better and better and better. And now obviously this year he looked incredible before the injury. And maybe at the trade deadline, you can go and get a solid receiver from one of these teams that's just completely out of it. We'll just have to see how it plays out between now and then and how bad and or good it looks.
By the way, we didn't even say what the injury was to Rice. So
we don't know.
If anybody's listening to this show and they didn't watch any of the games yesterday, they have no idea what happened. So it's perhaps an ACL tear, that's going to be a season-ending injury for Rashee Rice, and it was caused by none other than Patrick Mahomes.
That's correct. On a awful interception that Mahomes threw, and then while the Chargers were returning it, they fumbled it, and Mahomes went to dive for it or something, and his helmet went straight into Rice's knee, ACL. First off, this is why quarterbacks, when you throw an interception, I hate when this happens, and I'm not blaming Mahomes for the obviously freak things happen. It's football. Quarterbacks, when they throw an interception, don't go try to make tackles or recover the ball. You just stand to the sideline and the play's over. You see so many bad things happen when quarterbacks throw a pick and then they go try to get involved in the play. That's not your job. You messed up. Go back on the field next time. Problem for the Chiefs, Ryan, next 2 weeks, New Orleans Saints, and then you go to San Francisco to take on the Niners.
Ooh.
So it's not like they get it.
And then what? Is it bye after that?
I don't. Oh, so no, it's a bye in between. I'm sorry. So you get Saints bye week at the Niners at the Raiders.
Well, there may be your saving grace is that bye week.
Let's hope so.
So you can at least have a break before you get your butt handed to you twice. The Minnesota Vikings are 4-0 for the first time since 2016. That's hard to believe. All under the belt of Sam Darnold. Who would have thought we had been sitting here week 4 talking about Sam Darnold and the Minnesota Vikings being 4-0, undefeated, only one of, I think, 3 teams now that are undefeated in the NFL. Is that not bizarre to you? It's just absolutely bonkers, if you ask me. You didn't, but I'm going to answer. Are the Vikings the best team in the NFL now that we know that the Bills lost the Sunday Night Football game? This leaves the door open. Who's the best team now?
Unequivocally, the best team in the NFL is
Gotta be
the Minnesota Vikings.
Gotta be. There's no question.
No, there's no question. Now, doesn't mean they're going to win the Super Bowl or anything, but
no, because it's still the Vikings.
Right. But it's also, look at who they've beaten. They've beaten the Giants, okay, but then they beat San Francisco, they beat Houston, and they beat Green Bay. 3 assumed to be playoff teams. They beat, and not just beat, by the way, kind of stomped. They haven't had a close game. They played with their food a little bit with Green Bay here and kind of let Green Bay get back. But it's similar to the Alabama-Georgia thing. It's like the defense starts playing a little more conservative. You let people get back into it. Makes the game look a little bit different than it should have been. However, the Vikings are dominant, and they're dominant on both sides of the ball. The defense is suffocating. Jordan Love threw for a lot of yards today. I think, he had 389 yards. Most of it came in the second half, but he was erratic. I mean, it was all over the field. He was the typical Brett Favre Green Bay quarterback where he would wow you, and then he would do something where you pulled your hair out. Minnesota is
also coming back from an injury, so I do give him a little bit of grace there.
Of course. And interesting, coming back from the injury against this defense, I was surprised he was able to put up the yards he was.
Yeah.
And the fact they were able to kind of come back in the football game, ultimately turnovers are what bit them, but also turnovers from the Vikings is really the only reason Green Bay was able to kind of crawl back into the football game. That's what is so scary. Even a game like this where Minnesota made so many mistakes, Sam Darnold only 1 pick. He was really good as usual. They made so many mistakes. They had 3 turnovers. They let Green Bay kind of close back into the game, but they were still able to win it, and it never really felt in doubt. I think the Vikings are the most complete team in football. They have a scary offense that can strike at will. Sam Darnold is definitely playing the best football of his career. He's throwing absolute dimes, and the defense, you don't know what they're going to throw at you from drive to drive. They are incredible. And I don't know if they can sustain it. I don't know if they're going to go all the way, but I know I wouldn't want to play them.
I don't want to play anybody right now being the Buffalo Bills, period, but definitely not the Minnesota Vikings. One thing that really impressed me is they had 120 yards on the ground rushing. I thought it was pretty good for a team that, they really hang their hat on Sam Darnold most of the time. Justin Jefferson is obviously one of the greatest wide receivers. I think I saw a stat today where he got into the first 5 years most yards, and I think he was in the same category as like Rice, like Jerry Rice and all those guys, like these big timers.
Randy Moss.
Randy Moss. Justin Jefferson is now in those talks, and I think that's great for him. But I never thought that Sam Darnold would be the one delivering the ball to him efficiently every single week. We keep thinking that the Sam Darnold crash is coming. I don't think it is anymore. I think that we know now that Sam Darnold was just hidden by a lot of other bad situations at other teams. And I think that now he's gotten into an offense where things are just moving and grooving for him. I really don't see a team capable of beating the Minnesota Vikings as it sits right now.
That the Sam Darnold situation, and we talked about this a little bit last week as Malik Willis looked great with Matt LaFleur, it just shows you the difference in coaching, what good coaching does. Sam Darnold was never really the problem. His problem was Adam Gase and New York, and then he went to Carolina. Well, no one looks good in Carolina. That's why he went to the 49ers, was the backup to Purdy, and Shanahan was singing his praises. He was like, Sam Darnold's great. He's fantastic. Would love to have Sam Darnold as my quarterback. He's just not better than Brock Purdy. And then Kevin O'Connell sweeps in, who I think is one of the best offensive minds in football, and he proves it. Sam Darnold is a legitimate MVP candidate 4 weeks through the season. I didn't expect that. Me and you both thought Sam Darnold would look good to start and then start to regress. That might still happen, but just to be frank, I thought the regression would have come by now. I didn't think they'd be 4-0 and cruising. And also, when you add to Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison finally coming back and looking just terrific. Jordan Addison, I think he scored twice today. I don't know who has the team that can stop Minnesota. That's the thing. I don't know. I think you have to hope that you can force Sam Darnold into a mistake or exploit the defense like Jordan Love was able to do and get into a shootout. But if Minnesota gets up on you early, like they've done against every opponent, they just suffocate you. They have trailed for less than 4 minutes all season. That is crazy.
Wow. When you say that, it hit me differently. Next week they go to, they're at home against the Jets.
Right.
That should be a win for them. Now, I know the Jets played a little rough today. The weather, you can say whatever you will, but you still got beat by the Broncos. I don't care what you say.
Of course.
That doesn't look good on the resume. So, going to be a tough game next week. This will probably be the best defense, aside from the 49ers, that they faced this year. So, going to be interesting to see how they do there. I assume it's a win. They have a Week 6 bye, so they have the early bye. But listen to these next 6 games, okay? You have the Lions, the Rams, the Colts, the Jags, the Titans, the Bears. Out of those 6, there's only one team that I see giving them a really big problem, and that's going to be the Lions.
However, and the Lions haven't looked as good as Minnesota has.
Right, and we're going to see tomorrow night, Monday night, how they're really looking. But also, they play the Lions at home after a bye week, so that's another 2 points in their favor.
So you've got these next 7 games, the Jets, the Lions, the Rams, Colts, Jaguars, Titans, Bears. Those next 7 games, even if you lose 2 of them, which, right. I mean, come on, they're probably not. They might lose 1. If they lose 2, it's probably because we're maybe starting to see that Sam Darnold regression or injury, something unforeseen. But just say, through those 7 games, they lose 2, then they're, 9-2 going into week 14 or week 13? They are cruising to the NFC 1 seed. And you look at their schedule, and obviously anything can happen. It's the NFL. But when you just read off the next 7 weeks, you look at the ones after that, there's not a lot of tough opponents left on the schedule. They've almost got all their tough games out of the way. They are in a really good position. And they're starting to be in that position where if you're a Minnesota fan, it's starting to get past the point of just hope, and you're actually starting to believe that this might be the year.
Well, it also happened in 2016, and you didn't win a Super Bowl then either. So
they fell apart midway through the year that season.
So knowing the Vikings, I know how the fans operate. I know that you guys, you just want to act like it's not even happening. You just want to close your eyes, and you just want to look up at week 17, and you hope that you're, 15-2, 14-3, somewhere around there. But I will say, for Minnesota fans, I think it's time to turn that leaf. It's not Kirk Cousins anymore. This is the real deal. This is the most well-rounded team in the NFL, and you've got a shot to not only make it to the playoffs, but through the playoffs this time?
I think most Vikings fans are probably already to that stage. I think they're probably already for getting the bad vibes.
So much history of bad stuff happening.
It's true. It's usually something bad goes wrong. And if I have to find something bad in this performance, just to try and say, only 3 points scored in the second half.
Yeah.
Now, is that because they had the big lead, they just managed the game, they got sloppy with the turnovers? Or did Green Bay discover something that other teams can capitalize on? I don't know, but I know that Minnesota's in a really good spot. Let's talk about it. Let's try to be... I know you, Ryan. You're not going to overreact. You're not going to get dramatic. You're not going to burn everything you own. Let's just talk about it, and let's be honest. The Ravens handled the Bills on Sunday Night Football. Absolutely handled them. 35-10, the final, and it was really never close, never in doubt. Be honest. I want your genuine thoughts here. Are you surprised?
Yes.
I am too.
Yeah, of course. Of course I'm surprised. Because you and I both stated last week the Bills were going to wipe the floor with the Ravens. Where did this Ravens defense come from?
I am not sure.
How did the Raiders score 26 points and win the football game against these guys?
No idea. Cowboys scored 25 on them. Raiders scored 26. Chiefs scored 27. Buffalo had to grind to get 10.
This is what... Okay, so the most aggravating point in the entire game, I think every Buffalo fan and non can agree with me here, the trick play, guys. What are we doing? We just got back into the football game. We have momentum on our side after halftime. We stopped the Ravens. We got the ball back. And now you want to do some kind of trick play where you send Coleman behind center, right?
Oh, I don't even remember.
I think it was Coleman. He snaps the ball, pitches it to Allen on a bad pitch, by the way. And then Allen, instead of going around because he was getting chased down by this defense that looks like 3 Mack trucks coming at you at all points in the game, stops to turn and throw the ball and then almost gets his head knocked off.
Yep. And fumbles and turns the ball over. And that's it. That was the game.
That's when the game officially ended. If we would have scored there, we would have been up, been within
a score, I think.
2 scores technically, and then we would have probably went for 2 because that would have made us down by 3. And then we had a good shot. We still had the momentum on our side. We probably could have called,
But you mentioned it with momentum. They had stopped the Ravens, been able to stop them, force a 3 and out, get the ball back. And in the second half, they were doing what they didn't do in the first half, which was run the football because they were scared. What'd you call it? You said they got in the Madden mode?
I call it Madden mode. It's where you get down by 2 or 3 scores and all you want to do is air the ball out constantly. The Madden trap. You just want to get those yards and those points as quick as you can, and the clock is irrelevant to you.
Right. Even though it's only the second quarter and you got plenty of time, you just start throwing the ball. They went away from James Cook. The second half, they went back to James Cook. They were moving the ball. They were driving. They were in total control. You felt it. You felt it in the stadium. It started to shift. Buffalo had in all the momentum. I'm not saying they would have won the football game, but they were clawing back in it. And especially if they scored there, they're right back in the football game. And they call that stupid double reverse. Allen's getting ran down because I can't remember the defensive player. I'm sorry, Ravens fans, that read it perfectly. And instead of just taking the sack, which still would have been bad, Josh Allen tries to heave it, does his Josh Allen thing because he's had to put the cape on. He's the only reason you're even kind of in the game after that amazing sideline pass. It's a fumble. Ravens take over. Game over. I'm with you. Where did this Ravens defense come from? I'm not shocked that Derrick Henry was able to dominate like that. Okay, if you say that happens, if you say Derrick Henry got 199 yards, I can believe that.
It's any given Sunday.
Sure. But it's the fact that Buffalo scored 10 points when the offense has looked fantastic. After what they did to Jacksonville last week, I know it's Jacksonville, but Jacksonville was in a dogfight with Houston today. It doesn't compute.
We got complacent. We went into an away opponent's field and thought that we were bigger and badder than we really are. And I don't think that this team was ready to face such adversity because we've had a pretty easy go of it for the past 3 weeks. I mean, the past 3 weeks, Josh Allen really hasn't had to play in the fourth quarter. Let's be honest. And now, when they got behind like this, it reminded me of last year's Bills when they looked disorganized, confused, flustered, nothing was going their way. And then after halftime, it turned around. I was like, oh my goodness, we're back. we're back. That's actually when I went and put on my Bills hat because I forgot I wasn't wearing it. And I said, here we go. This is it. This is when we come back and show the NFL and everybody watching who we are, put Lamar Jackson down like we did last year. And then the trick play. That will live in my brain the rest of the season because it was one of the dumbest calls I've ever seen in this position. I don't even mind the trick play. I'm okay with those trick plays, but where you are in the game, it's not like this. We weren't going tick for tack. It was, we were down. We were getting dominated.
Trying your best to claw back into the game.
That is not the time to run a trick play.
No.
If you remember, if anybody's college football fans, Alabama football, near the end, it got tick for tack. Alabama ran an awesome trick play where Milroe just walks off the field, claps his hands, the ball snaps to the running back. It's a direct snap run. That was a good time to call a trick play. Here's not a good time to call a trick play.
But also, in that scenario, the trick play, it's got a little bit of flashiness to it, but the play ultimately is a direct snap to the halfback.
Yeah, like your chance of, your rate of success for that football play for Alabama was pretty high because you're gonna run the ball. The risk of turnover, not likely. This one, anytime you have a reverse, there's always a chance. Okay? And then also the line for the Ravens, the defensive line and the linebackers have been getting through constantly all night.
Yeah, I agree. And the other way, the Ravens offensive line was able to hold up beautifully. I mean, like the Bills could not get any pressure at all.
Lamar Jackson had all the time in the world to do whatever he wanted to do, and he did.
Yeah, and he did. So here is my question. I know you said the Bills got complacent, but looking back, first 3 weeks of the season for Buffalo, Arizona, you beat in a tight game. Miami, you dog walk. Jacksonville, you dog walk. And then the Ravens, you get dog walked. Did we, us, me and you, the media, people in general, football fans, did we just overinflate who Buffalo was because of the opponents they beat? Or are they really a very talented team that just weren't prepared for this game? Which one is it?
Yeah, right now I'm not going to overreact and say that they aren't. I still think they are a really good football team. I still think they are one of the top 5 teams in the NFL for sure. I do think that the Ravens caught us off guard. By the way, the Ravens are a much better football team week 4 than they are week 1.
Correct.
Everybody can realize that they have gotten their stuff together and they are starting to be a really well-rounded football team. That defense seems to be back.
And didn't let their foot off the gas, which has been their thing this season.
Right. They did not. And Lamar Jackson in the pocket looks perfect. I mean, he was just fantastic in the pocket. And this line is holding up so solid that I think it's a rough road for anybody to go face the Ravens going forward this year. But as for the Bills, I'm not going to overreact. I think that we got caught off guard being complacent with our thumbs up our butt. And I think that we made some cute little moves to lose ourselves the football game. I think we're literally, I know we keep talking about the trick play. I think that one trick play was the difference between a W and an L tonight. I really do. I firmly believe that because we were playing so well coming out of halftime until that trick play. And then it was just like a balloon. Once you popped it, everything deflated and we were done for.
Because it was so hard to get the momentum back at that. The fact that they had even got the momentum there was difficult. So you're not going to regain it. Again, I can't go so far as to say I think they would have won it, but they at least were going to make it a fight. It was going to be a fight, and Baltimore would have had to play to win. They wouldn't have just had to, protect the lead. But I will say with you, just to not overreact, Buffalo fans, the Ravens definitely had their back more against the wall. They needed this. Buffalo was 3-0 coming into this game. Baltimore was 1-2. Baltimore really couldn't afford to lose this game at home and fall to 1-3 with a divisional opponent in Cincinnati next week. They needed this way more. We'll see. It doesn't look good for Buffalo, but we'll see. The Ravens, they go to Cincinnati next week to take on the Bengals. Buffalo goes to Houston to take on C.J. Stroud and the Texans, who struggled against Jacksonville today, but they are divisional rivals. A lot of questions about both these teams. How good or bad are either of them? I don't know. We'll start to find out as the season goes along, but definitely a wake-up call to Buffalo tonight.
The Tampa Bay Buccaneers dominated the Philadelphia Eagles today in an impressive victory. I think the score was 33-16, which the 16 points was, I don't even feel like they should have scored those. Like, it was just utter domination everywhere you looked. The only silver lining, I think, was Saquon Barkley every now and then looked really, really great. But he is probably only great piece on that team today because there's a lot of injuries there.
Yes.
We'll talk about that later. My question to you is, obviously, if the Tampa Bay Bucks play like this every week, can they beat any team in the NFL? And the 1A to that is, are you concerned that Baker Mayfield's throwing the ball 47 times?
I guess the answer to both is yes,
Okay.
with an asterisk to both of them. Yeah, Baker throwing it 47 times, not great. But this is Tampa Bay. They don't have a run game. They just don't. Now, they didn't need one today. Bucky Irving, 10 carries for 49 yards. Rachaad White, 10 carries for 49 yards. Bucky Irving had a touchdown. But this is when Tampa is good. When they're able to pin their ears back and Baker gets his mojo, baby, and he starts grooving, they can tear you apart. 30 for 47, 347 yards, 2 touchdowns. Baker was on fire. But when you look at Tampa overall, offensively, they're middle of the pack in the league. Defensively, they're middle of the pack in the league. I won't go into Philadelphia because we're going to talk about them in our touchdown or turnover segment, but I will give a little preview of that by saying Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown were both out. Like, I understand we can't give Tampa too much credit for stomping the Eagles when they didn't have a receiver. They didn't have a receiver, Ryan. If Tampa didn't have this performance, I would actually start to be skeptical. So, I almost look at this as okay, good. You did what you should have done on this game.
Yeah, they needed it this game because let me just read you until their bye week. Are you ready for this?
Hit me.
At the Falcons, at the Saints, the Ravens, the Falcons, at the Chiefs, 49ers.
Whoa.
That may be the toughest run in all of NFL for any football team.
That is crazy. And 3 divisional matchups. So at the Falcons divisional, at the Saints divisional, then you get the Ravens, Falcons divisional again, and at the Chiefs, then Niners, before you finally get a break with the Giants and the Panthers.
That's rough.
I just don't think they're good enough to survive that stretch.
No, if you don't have a run game, especially
because let's be honest, Philadelphia has not looked like a great team this year. At times they have, they're 2-2. But honestly, and I'm not trying to give the segment away, but if they had Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown, this game looks very different. Tampa is just one-dimensional. They can beat bad teams if their defense is playing well when they don't have a ton of defensive injuries, but they just don't have a run game. And ultimately, if we're talking right now and trying to look big picture of who are real competitors, could Tampa win the NFC South? Yes. The NFC South is very competitive between Tampa, Atlanta, and New Orleans. Okay? It really is. But I would still favor Atlanta or New Orleans right now because I just think they're a more complete team. Regardless of how good you look in September, October, if you cannot run the football in December, then you're not going to make deep playoff runs. It really is that simple.
We don't have to wait till December. We'll find out here in just a couple of weeks when they face this gauntlet of teams.
Right.
If you can't run the ball on these teams, it's going to be a nightmare for you. And Baker may can throw for 50 or 60 times a game, but these defenses he's going to go up against, from the Falcons to the Saints to the Ravens to the Chiefs to the 49ers, they're a lot better than any other team you faced. What's their second best win? The Lions? Right? I mean, the
Lions just gave the game. I mean, don't get me wrong, Tampa was good, but the Lions just made constant mistakes. The Lions were 1 for 7 in the red zone. So Detroit had opportunities in that game and just didn't capitalize.
And then you could say, well, the Commanders too, but the Commanders week 1 were not what they are week 4. A completely different team. Jayden Daniels has actually found a way to play football now and looks really good doing it. But their second best win is against the Lions. And by the way, they got beat by the Broncos.
Right. And that's another thing, too. I understand they had a ton of defensive injuries. But look, everyone has injuries. That's just where we are. We're at week 4 and we're week 5. Yeah.
Everybody has injuries.
We're starting to get to the point where saying, well, they were really beat up isn't an excuse. And I know I said that for the Eagles, but I'm just saying Tampa did what they should do given the equal circumstances. So we'll find out really quick who Tampa is once they get through this stretch. I'm rooting for them because I really like Baker Mayfield. I've always been a big fan. I would like to see Tampa do well, but this is a gauntlet, and if you can't run the football, I just don't have a lot of faith they're going to win many of these games. We'll see, and you mentioned it. I know the injuries. I can't forget that Broncos loss. I just can't wipe that from my memory where Bo Nix just walked the dog on them. It's time to play our favorite game on the show, This is touchdown or turnover. The basic premise here is one of us will give the other a statement as if it's fact, and we will have to say touchdown or turnover. Touchdown means we agree, we believe that statement is true. Turnover means we disagree, we believe that statement is false. Before we go any further, like the video, subscribe to the channel, tell your friends about it. We're trying to grow an audience and build a family. Old school water cooler football talk with comedy. We don't take ourselves too seriously. Let's get into it. The Colts would be more successful if Joe Flacco was their starting quarterback. Touchdown or turnover?
Touchdown all the way, baby. Look, you put a guy like Anthony Richardson, who's averaging 2 interceptions a game over the last 3 games, 6 interceptions in 3 football games is unacceptable if you're this generational star. And by the way, he got hurt today, came back in with an aggravated hip. And instead of the coaching staff saying, hey, let's sit him, they said, let's just hope he gets hurt again. And let's put Flacco in. Because when Flacco came in, threw an immediate touchdown, got the game back on the game script, and then also didn't throw interceptions and had a pretty decent game for an old man. He won the football game. He defeated the Steelers, who were undefeated. I think that this team has a chance now that they have Joe Flacco. Let's not forget that he's just 1 year removed from taking the Browns to the playoffs. He did it. So I think Joe Flacco is still your best bet. Instead of Anthony Richardson, you need to sit him on your bench. He's not a good quarterback. I don't think he's an NFL quarterback, but we also only have a handful of games to sample of him because he was hurt all last year. Sit him, let him learn under Flacco, and maybe in the next year or two, you start him and hope that he can be an NFL franchise quarterback like you are grooming him to be. That's my opinion.
I don't have anything to add. Couldn't agree with you more. I picked the Colts to make the playoffs. I feel way better about that when Joe Flacco's the quarterback and Shane Steichen's running a real NFL offense. I agree. Richardson, he makes some wild plays, but most of the time he leaves you scratching your head. I agree completely.
All right, Tristan, you're up now. CJ Stroud is hiding the fact that the Texans are just a mediocre football team.
Oh.
Touchdown or turnover?
It's a touchdown. Doesn't mean that the Texans can't go far. It doesn't mean that they can't improve. Right now, they are kind of a mediocre football team. They are 17th in points per game scored, 20th in points per game allowed. Nut statistics that really scream Super Bowl to you. If you watch the game against the Jacksonville Jaguars, the Jaguars were stomped by Buffalo last week. We were literally saying they needed to fire everyone, including the interns. This week, they almost beat Houston. Houston sometimes can't get out of their own way. I will credit you. You said it earlier, and you're right. The Joe Mixon injury is a big deal. Losing him definitely affects the offense. But also, we can't keep overlooking how poorly this offensive line is playing. One, they're playing poorly, and 2, the amount of penalties are ridiculous. It seems like every time they have a big play or a big positive play, holding, coming back, it's constant. I didn't look up this stat. I wish I would have. They have to be one of the most penalized offenses in the league. CJ Stroud, on the other hand, is elite, and he's bailing them out of a lot of bad situations. He is one of the best quarterbacks in the league. The defense also doesn't feel like it's quite as good as it was last year, but I'm not as worried about them. I'm just more worried about the consistency on offense. Maybe if they got Joe Mixon back, I would feel different. But right now, when you're middle of the pack and points scored, points allowed, I think it's true. I think they're a mediocre team, but you've got an elite quarterback, so that elevates you immediately.
3rd most penalized team in the NFL. So you were right on the money with that. And then also, I do think Joe Mixon makes a huge impact, but you also got to look at their schedule and see who they've beaten. It's the Colts, the Bears, and the Jags now. So where do you hang your hat? And by the way, all these games were super close. 29-27, 19-13 against the Bears, 24-20 today against the Jags, who looked like one of the worst teams in the NFL for the past 3 weeks. So, and then, by the way, the Vikings stomped them 34-7. So when you play these really talented teams, next week you got to go to Buffalo and play them. Or I'm sorry, you play Buffalo at home. Thank God for you. The Texans have a shot at, being embarrassed at home, I think, by the Bills. I think that will happen. It seems like when they play these good defenses, it's just a train wreck, man.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, CJ Stroud is able to pull him out of a lot of it. The question is, how long can he keep that up? we'll see. I do think they're still a good team. I think they can still be a playoff team, but they have a lot to clean up, as do a lot of teams. All right, next one. Ryan, the Bengals, we left them for dead, but here's your question, your statement. The win over the Panthers, it is proof that the Cincinnati Bengals are turning things around, touchdown or turnover.
I'm going to go turnover here, man. I don't think that this is proof enough for me because, look, they only won by 10 points, okay, against the Panthers and Andy Dalton. And I know that the Panthers are definitely improved from Bryce Young, but I still think that to feel comfortable and feel like you're turning a new leaf, that you're going on the right path, that you're starting down the golden road, so to speak, you need to beat the Panthers comfortably. And I don't think this was a comfortable win for them. At some points in the game, you thought that the Panthers were going to get back into it. Like, at any point in the game, did you feel confident that the Bengals had it in the bag?
No, not at all. I was actually worried at how close Carolina kept it all game.
So to me, when you have Joe Burrow going 22 of 31 and throwing an interception, throwing for 2 touchdowns, yeah, we saw that Jamar Chase is a monster. Everybody knew that. That's old news. I still think this defense has a lot to learn. And I don't think that this is the game I'm going to hang my hat on and say, hey, the Bengals are here. They're 1-3 now, Tristan. It's not like that's a huge accomplishment. And their one win is against the Panthers.
Right. Man, I think you're right. Again, not writing them off completely, but the 0-3 start, hard to overcome, especially when they lost to Jayden Daniels. And it's not Joe Burrow. Like, a lot of people are saying Joe Burrow's playing bad. Maybe they're not fantastic. They obviously don't have the run game they had in the past, but the offense is fine. The offense is putting up points every week. It's the defense. Ryan, the Cincinnati defense, 26th in points per game allowed. They allow the most points in the only teams that allow more points than Cincinnati: Dallas, Tennessee, Arizona, Jacksonville, the Rams, and Carolina. That's bad company, especially for a defensive coordinator in Lou Anarumo that we think is one of the best in the league. The defensive roster is just not up to it this year. I don't know where the Bengals go from here, but I'm with you. I agree that it's a turnover.
All right, Tristan, you're next up on touchdown or turnover. The Eagles are just dealing with the injury bug, and they're actually much better than they look whenever you watch them on a Sunday afternoon. Touchdown or turnover?
Because of us recording this after week 4, I'm going to say touchdown. They're better than they looked against Tampa Bay. You're missing A.J. Brown and you're missing Devontae Smith. What do you got then? I mean, that's their entire receiving core. You have Dallas Goedert left. I don't think the Eagles are true Super Bowl contenders. I think they're a little too all over the place. And mainly, I don't trust Nick Sirianni. But when you look at them just getting dominated by Tampa Bay, I don't think that happens if they have their pass catchers there. If A.J. Brown can get healthy, if Devontae Smith can clear concussion protocol, the Eagles' offense is going to be dangerous again. Yeah, Jalen Hurts is a little erratic. They're not what they were 2 years ago, but they're still a legit NFC contender. I think they looked worse today because of the injury bug. For sure, this one's a touchdown.
Completely agree with you, man. I think that once you have Devontae Smith, A.J. Brown back, you do have a much improved offense. And I think this offense is really where they lose a lot of their football games here recently. If you can't score points, kind of hard to win a football game.
Who would have thought? All right, Dallas, the Cowboys, they haven't looked how a lot of people expected, although I think they look exactly how me and you expected. This is an interesting one. Dallas, their next 2 games are against the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Detroit Lions. Ryan, they're going to lose both of them. Touchdown or turnover?
That's a big touchdown from me, Tristan. I don't trust this Dallas team further than I can throw them. And last time I checked, I have trouble carrying the groceries up the steps. So that's not far in case you were keeping score. Dallas has lost their 2 biggest defensive players with DeMarcus Lawrence and Micah Parsons.
Yeah.
They're going to be out for the next 2 weeks at least with sprains of some sort. High ankle sprain, I think, to Micah Parsons, and some other sprain, foot sprain or something like that to DeMarcus Lawrence.
I know Lawrence's was more severe.
Yeah, than they even anticipated, right? But I think both of them are going to be out for at least 2 weeks. This was the Thursday night football game. Dallas won 20-15 against the Giants, and they looked shaky. I mean, at best. I thought the Giants may pull it out, and I was kind of rooting for them secretly just because I can't stand Mike McCarthy. I've made that known on this show. But I do think that they lose the next 2 football games, and I'll tell you why. What has Dallas struggled with that it looked like they got fixed on Thursday night?
The run game.
The run game. Stopping the run game, right?
Oh, both.
Both the run game and stopping the run game, right? So losing your two biggest defensive guys to prevent people from running on you, that's not too good.
Especially when you've already struggled to stop it.
Especially when you're going up against a team like the Steelers who has Najee Harris that can run the football efficiently, but then you got Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery coming in week 6 at the Lions, or actually you'll be at home, but still you got two running backs there that are likely going to run all over you. Do you think that the Steelers can pull it out? Do you think the Lions can pull it out? I do. I really do. You got week 7 bye for the Cowboys. Hopefully you can get your guys back going into week 8 against the 49ers at the 49ers. It's going to be a tough run, but I don't trust this Dallas football team, man. Touchdown all the way for me.
Only thing that gives me pause on there is if the Steelers were stupid enough to go back to Russell Wilson as their starter next week. I don't think they'll do it, but if they do, that throws everything out of the window, but we'll see.
We're going to wrap up your set of questions here. The 49ers are back to form, and they should be Super Bowl favorites now, touchdown or turnover.
Oh, I didn't realize the second half of this question. This is a split question. Back to form, touchdown. Super Bowl favorites, turnover. Right now, if you were going to go with a Super Bowl favorite in the NFC, it's got to be Minnesota because, one, they have the head-to-head win over them. But let me just focus on the positive side of it. They are back to form. We have seen what San Francisco looks like when they have all of their pieces. It feels like Brandon Ayuk is finally getting the training camp, rust off of him because he didn't play any. He was too busy worried about dollar signs. He got the dollar signs. He hasn't been performing. Finally, he's back. George Kittle, he was back and healthy, looked great today. Then he got injured again. We'll see what happens. Oh, the touchdown catch was beautiful.
George Kittle is constantly injured, by the way.
Yes. It's
and
just
he always
the ride.
Plays.
It's the ride you take with him. Right now, the San Francisco offense, even with all the injuries they've had, second in the league in yards a game. So that shows you they're productive even when they're missing people. When they miss people, Juwan Jennings goes off. You know what I mean? They have enough pieces. I can't say they're Super Bowl favorites, but when you've got Kyle Shanahan and you've got a quarterback like Brock Purdy who can run that offense, it sucks losing Christian McCaffrey. They're not going to be as good as they were last year, but they've shown they can still manage and win football games. They should have won the Rams football game. They got blindsided by the Vikings. Other than that, they've been cruising. The healthier they get, the better they get. The 49ers are going to be fine, and they did look back to form against the Patriots.
Yeah, and I think that Christian McCaffrey, after taking his long trip over to get a schnitzel from Germany and come back, I do think that they're saying that obviously he went for extra stem cells. That's kind of the rumor, and I think that to be true. I think that's their push to try to get him back in the later half of the season. They're going to keep him out as long as they have to hopefully have him for the playoffs. I don't blame him whatsoever. But then again, Jordan Mason seems to be doing the job just fine. I do think that this 49ers team is back to form. I agree with you. As far as the Super Bowl favorites, man, when they lost against the Vikings, I was like, what happened? The Vikings are a great team. So I don't think that's a loss that you can say like that's a surprising loss. It's actually like that was a hard fought game right there.
Yeah.
The loss against the Rams was a little questionable, especially since the Rams had like everybody on the IR.
And the 49ers had double-digit leads twice and let them come back. They threw the game away for sure.
That was an outcoached, outclassed game. Obviously, they handled the Patriots. They do have the Cardinals, the Seahawks, the Chiefs, the Cowboys before their bye week in Week 9. That's going to be a tough run. But since the 49ers are back healthy, we think with Kittle, Debo, and Ayuk, it should be a pretty easy run at it. If this offense can hold up. By the way, Brock Purdy looked great on the scrambling today. Did you see some of the scrambling?
I feel like that's when he's at his best, actually. He's so much more athletic than people give him credit for.
He really is. But yeah, 49ers for me all the way. I agree with you. Touchdown on back to form. Let's just forget about the Super Bowl favorites for this segment. All right, Tristan, week 4 is in the books, except for the Monday night games. You guys be sure to tune in to the 2 Monday night games. Is that going to go on all year, by the way?
I hope not.
I really hope not. Last week was easy to watch because the Bills destroyed the Jags, so you could just turn that one off, and then you could watch the really good game with the Commanders.
But before that game, we thought it was going to be the opposite. We thought we'd be watching Bills Jags and not. So I wonder, is this week, is the Seahawks Lions going to be a blowout and we're going to all be glued to Tennessee Miami? For all of our sakes, I hope not.
I hope not either. Look, Tennessee is set up to win in a really big way. on Monday night. I think that they could really dominate this game if they tried hard. And the Dolphins just have so many injuries, man, and they look really shaky right now. So anyway, be sure to tune in to Monday night. Week 4 is pretty much in the books for us. Thank you guys for tuning in. Tristan, get us out of here.
Yeah, we appreciate you for listening and joining the show. Make sure you like the channel. Like the channel. Can you do that? I don't know. Like the video. Subscribe to the channel. Click any button that'll let you click on this channel. It helps us, I promise. Make sure you tune back in on Friday to see our Week 5 picks. We continue our competition throughout the season. 2 idiots covering one sport, bluffing our way through the NFL football season. We'll see you next week. He's Ryan. I'm Tristan. Goodbye.